I am Jim Collison and live from Omaha, Nebraska, and the Gallup offices in India. This is Gallup's Call to Coach, recorded on January 28th, 2016. Call to Coach is a resource for those who want to help others discover and use their strengths. We have Gallup experts and independent strengths coaches share tactics, insights, and strategies to help coaches maximize the talent of individuals, teams, and organizations around the world. If you have questions during this webcast, we do have a live chat room available for you right below the main video window there. If you're catching the recorded version of this, you can also send us your questions. You can send those in an email. Just send that to coaching@gallup.com. If you have questions about custom strengths coaching solutions for small, medium, or large organizations, you can send us an email, same, or if you're watching on the live page, we have a contact form that's available for you right there. Just send us an email, coaching@gallup.com. Don't forget to visit the Gallup Strengths Center. That's just gallupstrengthscenter.com for all your coaching resources and StrengthsFinder training needs. You can also catch the video and now both streaming and downloadable audio for offline listening. So if you want to take this on the road with you, listen to it on the train, in a plane, or maybe even while you're working out. You can catch all those links, including the links to our mobile apps and everything that we have available for you on our coaches blog, coaching.gallup.com. Pooja Luthra, if I can get that right, is our host today. She works as an advanced consultant with Gallup in Delhi. And Pooja, I haven't seen you in 2 months. Great to see you, and welcome to another Call to Coach.
Great to see you too, Jim, and a very happy new year to you. I know it's been a couple of months, and hopefully we're going to be seeing each other more regularly from here on. And the good part is that these 2 months that we haven't been having this Call to Coach, we've been actually doing a lot of other exciting things. And I can promise you that at least in India here, 2016 promises to be a great year when it comes to taking the idea of strengths-based development forward. There are so many exciting events and courses, etc., that are being planned, and then I'll share it with everyone a bit later. But right now, I think first things first, a very, very warm welcome to our guest for today. Her name is Lopamudra Das. I had the privilege and the opportunity of getting to know her when she did her certification course a while back now, and it was so nice to see you again today, Lopa. As a quick introduction, guys, Lopa is a human resource professional with a plethora of experience behind her. She's had an opportunity to essay a wide spectrum of roles within the HR domain, including startups, managing mergers and acquisitions, being a consultant, managing unions, to name a few. I know of her, coaching is something which is close to her heart, and the idea of strengths-based development was something I think that got onto her very intuitively even when we were doing the course, and she has very exciting stories to share as we go ahead with the conversation today. So Lopa, a very warm welcome, and it's so nice to see you again.
Thank you so much, Pooja, and the privilege was really mine to interact with you and have you coach me and certify me. Thank you so much.
Great. Let's start a little bit. I know you have lots of stories to share today, but before we get on to all of that, just want to start by knowing a bit about your top 5 and your journey. But it's been a while since you did your Gallup certification course, so just to understand the journey since then, tell us a little bit about your top 5 and the journey since then.
Right. So, Pooja, and everyone who's viewing this video, my top 5 is relator, strategic, achiever, maximizer, and activator. And I would often struggle to understand why I do things the way I do, and why I react to situations the way I do. And when I actually took the Strength Finder, it was a process of self-discovery for me. It was such an eye-opener, and suddenly, I could see logic and I could see explanation behind why I did what I did and how I did. So, like you rightly said, it is something that came naturally to me. It is something that has come very intuitively to me. And, since I have finished the certification, I've had the opportunity to interact with clients who've been extremely excited about the strength-based development journey. And it's been a very, very encouraging, response that I have received. And the primary reason being what I stated for myself, the process of self-discovery. Right? What happens, as we all know, is our talents are so close to us, our strongest talents are so close to us that often it's very difficult for us to pinpoint them on our own. And when we find someone who can pinpoint those talents to us, it's a process of discovery. And that's what's really excited my coaches or my clients to partake the strength-based journey along with me, acting as a catalyst or an agent. So I've had the opportunity to interact with a couple of them, and they have they have actually wanted to speak to me on a repeated basis, because it has seen tangible outcomes both in their workspace and in their personal lives. So it's been a very encouraging and personally a very, very gratifying journey for me. I've also through this process been actually learning a lot, and I will share that as our conversation goes ahead. Of course, all of this I do pro bono because I am employed. I work for corporate, so I'm not a coach practitioner in terms of running a coaching practice, but I do coach actively.
Yeah, and that's the beauty of it, isn't it? I mean, whether you're doing coaching full time or you're doing pro bono, the idea is you get opportunities in every facet of life to be able to look at someone and tell them what their natural talents are. And I think that's what's pretty much gratifying about the work that we all do, right?
Yes.
So tell me a little bit more about the self awareness part of it. I know you had a very high degree of self awareness even when we first met, and then when we started talking about talents, etc., and the discussions that we've had. Tell me a little bit more. Anything that was in particular most gratifying for you in terms of your own self discovery post the course that you did?
Yes. I would, and I was sharing this with Jim when he was setting up. I would, always wonder why I, do what I do, why I take up the kind of assignments that I take up. I always end up picking extremely challenging, what seems extremely challenging to me, assignments, and I want to redo things my way. I'm often not satisfied with the way things have been done, and I want to reorient them so that they meet my personal standards of excellence or quality. And I've always and in the process, I'm sure I've frustrated my colleagues, or my team members have wanted to stop working with me for some time, or my managers have been very kind and not pointed this out to me. But I've always wondered why I did all of this, right? And when I saw the combination of my top five, my dominant strengths, I actually got my answers. And I remember we had a discussion about this during the, workshop as well. So that was one, very, very large gamut of self-discovery. The other thing is, historically, what I've been doing since childhood to early adulthood, and I hadn't really found behavioral science response hypotheses or theory around why things worked the way they worked, or why things turned out the way they turned out. I found a lot of catharsis in having studied the strength-based development, research and findings. And I'll just cite an example. Since early childhood, I would, while at school, go and teach at the rural schools, which were satellite of our schools. So these were children from, underprivileged economic backgrounds. And I wouldn't teach them ABC in the traditional manner, or I wouldn't, I would actually pick, let's say, a story from the Indian fables, which is Ramayana or the Panchatantra, and, weave a little skit around it. And, then I found that they would learn so much faster than they would if I use the traditional pedagogy, which was more, Western. Um, and what the strength-based development research helped me understand is that what comes most naturally to people is really their key talent. And if one helps them nurture the key talent, that becomes their strength. And hence I appealed to the natural culture of these kids, and in turn they were able to assimilate what was required. So the pedagogy was customized to subscribe to the natural talents, and hence we achieved the desired outcome of education, right? And I actually went on to presenting a paper around this in one of the world congresses in United Nations. So I was able to find so much correlation and so much catharsis in a lot of stuff that I did as a student and as a professional. So it was, and honestly, Pooja, the journey of self-discovery, my view is limitless. So I discover
Yeah.
every time
No,
I,
absolutely.
partake this journey.
Yeah, and it's not one dimensional in any way. So I think what in most of our discussions, what I've come to know of you is that you're able to tie things together. You're able to see it more than just the single dimension of a talent, which is actually a great starting point of the self-awareness journey. So tell me a little bit more about your journey post the certification in terms of you have done some consulting gigs, if I can call them that, and worked with a
Yeah.
few people around the idea of strengths-based development. So any examples that come to mind in terms of people who you've coached basis this? So you've seen it for yourself. So anything that has happened for others who you've coached around this?
Yes, several very, very interesting and amazing learning experiences for me. And I'll spin this around in three stories. So I'm going to talk about a cockroach and cherries. I'm going to talk about money, and I'm going to talk about self-expression and regulation. So these are the three stories in which I'm going to summarize, my experience of having coached clients post the certification. So let's talk about, you know, imagine a cockroach in a bowl of beautiful cherries. It spoils the entire bowl of beautiful cherry. Now imagine the converse. A bowl of cockroaches and one beautiful cherry. That one beautiful cherry does not even have a margin of the effect that one cockroach has, right? So that's really alluding to the theory of disgust, which there are a lot of people like Paul Rosnin, etc., who've done work around. And that's what one of my clients experienced, and that's what his issue at hand was when we met for our coaching conversation when we started the journey. Now his top five are responsibility, activator, positivity, relator, and ideation. And I just want to stay with the first two, responsibility and activator. Now, because this is an audience of fellow coaches and several folks who are very well aligned with the strength-based development terminology, it's just so obvious that this gentleman was the go-to guy for every new initiative, anything that was important at work. And he was extremely dependable. The activator in him made him start things as quickly as possible. The minute he got an additional responsibility or an additional task, he would take it up. Now what this whole situation at work was doing is that it was taking away his entire family time, right? So when I met him, he started with a story saying that he'd gone on this a gorgeous family vacation, and he'd spent about 10 days. And the last 2 days when which were really the most spectacular ones in terms of the way they were scheduled, he was the unhappiest. Okay, because he was constantly, so that was the cockroach in the bowl of cherries. The bowl of cherries was the 8-day spectacular holiday, and the last 2 days was the cockroach. It actually really spoiled his memory of how the holiday went, because in those last 2 days he was constantly thinking about all the stuff that he wasn't getting done at work because his team was constantly playing catch up. They did not have the level of expertise or the level of execution orientation or organization capability that he had, right? So that was really how our conversation began. And then he did his he took the strength finder inventory. He really he really owned the inventory, and once he did that, then we worked together, and he focused on his other strengths to help overcome the overuse of these other two strengths that were at play. And now he tells me, and I actually had a chat with him a month back, and he tells me that while he gets lesser vacation time, okay, so these are facts, now we're talking data, right? So in the last 6 months he's had one family vacation, whereas when we met that year he had 4 family vacations. Okay, so in this year he's had, so the run rate is 50% of what it was last year. However, he feels happier. The little time that he spends with family is quality time, and he's learned to say no. He's learned to become more strategic about what he picks and what he leaves for others, right? So that's the cockroach and cherry. Now there's one on money, and the funny thing about money, and there's a whole lot of research around adult development. A couple of I know that Harvard Med School did a 70-year longitudinal study around this, that it's not really about the quantum of money, right? So this other client of mine, when we met, he'd of course taken the inventory, and when I asked him what's top of his mind, and what's that one thing, if he had a wish he could change, he would change, he said, Lopa, I want to make my financial I want to securitize my future financially. I want to have complete financial security for the future. I want to just hedge all the risks that exist currently. And Pooja and Jim, that if you were to actually think from, again, data perspective, he in normal terms is extremely well invested, has several asset classes that he manages, so that was a bit of a, it didn't really strike base to me on why he was not happy with having his financial security in place and why he didn't feel financially secure. And then when we deep dived into the conversation, he said that he was managing distance with family because he had taken up an assignment which demanded him to timeshare between a couple of cities. And we realized that it was actually the warmth of personal relations that he was missing, which was leading him to feel insecure. And his top 5 are achiever, responsibility, relator, deliberative, and focus, right? And if we were to just think of deliberative right now, so what this distance and reduced personal warmth from close family or loved ones did to him is that his deliberative went into a basement and was on an overdrive, and he would constantly think of risks that are there and analyze that and analyze it further. What can go wrong, right? And the top of his mind was that maybe if I can hedge this risk of securitizing my financial future further, so it was not that it's not securitized right now, but further, then maybe it'll put me in a better place, right? So then of course we spoke about how he has in him what it will take to achieve this goal, and how he can use his focus, which is again a dominant strength, and how he can look at his environment to really do what he needs to do. And and he tells me that while he continues to timeshare, while he continues to manage distance, but he's in a good place as far as having securitized his financial future, found alternate options. So he found alternate options, so his deliberative went from the basement to the balcony, actually, right? And he seems to be in a better place. So these and before I get into the third one, these two experiences with clients were really, for me personally, a huge learning experience, because there are no compartments these days. So there is no the compartment between personal life and professional life is really amorphous right now. It's completely pervasive, and often seemingly disparate things lead into an issue, and again seemingly disparate solutions lead into the desired outcome, right? So that's what this helped me understand. And again, I'm a diehard fan of Daniel Kahneman, and he really talks about this, right? That often we oversimplify happiness, and happiness is really such a complex animal. It's a composite of so many complex things, right? And that's the whole cognitive confusion that all of us deal
No,
with.
absolutely.
And
And I
this is
think that is
learning.
something that, very often when coaches come back to us and ask us that, we've been coaching using a particular technique or a style for a very long time, and how does this all add up or fit in? I think the one thing we've consistently told them as well is that, you actually can't. It's not so, the boundaries between these things are not that well defined. In fact, they're all sort of, they merge together because, human beings are complicated, right? I mean, we really can't label them or put a name on them and saying this is who you are, you're high deliberative or whatever it is, because a lot of things sort of work in tandem together. And I guess the best coaches also understand that very, very well. So, keeping your eyes and ears open for everything that you're hearing and using whatever tools and techniques are there in your back pocket to understand the situation better is probably the defining thing of a great coach. Yeah.
Right.
You have
So
another story?
yeah, so this is the last one, and then I'm done with my bag of stories for now. So so now I'm going to come get out of the realm of very pervasive people to a more to a one that was more professional and was in the realm of work only. So this client of mine, he his top five are strategic, maximizer, activator, ideation, and futuristic, right? So lot of thinking going on, some relationship, lot of influence. Now he is someone who is constantly scoping the next horizon, constantly inundated with new ideas, new way of doing things. He always has a solution which is significantly better than what his peers or his significantly senior folks may have even thought of, right? So in that sense, he is really, really way ahead of the pack all the time, right? um, Now what that does is that and this is what he spoke to me about, is that he's often not happy with the quality or the pace at which execution happens through his teams or his colleagues, and that creates a lot of manager burnout for him, right? And since he is constant, he's often not happy or satisfied with the outcomes that his teams or his work groups are achieving. um, he felt that it was also impacting engagement, right? So this is what he wanted to get into the strength based journey to try and find solutions, right? And these are two very large issues actually. And so we did have those conversations, and in his own words he said that it was an eye opener. And he said, so what we ended up doing and is that he started partnering with people who had activator in their dominant talents, where he would spend more time visioning, thinking, strategizing, and then delegate to someone who also um, is very high on activator talents, but also has thinking talents. So he tried and found those combinations within his work groups and tried and delegated the most critical projects to them, right? So in this, what he was able to achieve is he was able to express himself, or come on to the dance floor when required, and jump off the dance floor and regulate his expression of talents, or or expertise when required, and delegate or have others step in. Now what this did is also that one is it helped reducing his feeling of burnout. It also had a positive impact on his team engagement, and his organization does employee alignment surveys, and he actually saw tangible results over the year on that. Is that because his team felt valued, okay, his team felt recognized, and his team also felt that they felt important because they got critical projects to manage. And because the burnout reduced, he felt happier at work, right?
Yeah.
So this
And
is
it's,
my last
you're
story.
talking about your experience, and actually, because
Yes.
Gallup has done so much research in the area, I mean, there is published data around this, because we do a lot of research in the area of well-being, engagement, of course. And the one thing that consistently comes up in this, in the analysis that we do, is that people who are able to focus on their strengths definitely report having a better quality of life. They
Yes.
definitely are highly engaged at work. So it's not something which is intuitive, which I think most managers understand. But to see
Yeah.
that data in front of you, which tells you that, I mean, if I'm not wrong, the data suggests that people who focus on their strengths are 6 times more likely to be engaged at work. And that's something
Yes.
which is research studies. So, there's credit,
Yes.
course. And the other thing of this example that you just pointed out is very close to my heart, because we often talk about strengths-based teams. Strengths-based teams is not just about only talking about the good stuff, and making sure that people understand what they're good at, and sort of totally ignoring what you're not good at. That's not what it is. It's not as fluffy as all of that. So strengths-based team talks about the fact that we are a group of imperfect people who will
Yes.
have to leverage each other for whatever unique talents each one brings to the table. And the
Yes.
minute you can understand that, and Kurt used to say that a lot, it's a very humble approach. It's a humble approach, because you are putting yourself out there and saying that, look, this is where I bring value, but this is where I need your help. So the
Yes.
humility part of it is absolutely enormous in this case. And I think the example what you're just saying sort of brings all the points there together. Yeah, great example, Lopa. Any particular, I mean, I know the examples you've said, any particular tip or technique that you found that across these experiences that you've had have really worked or added a lot of value to your coaching?
Yeah. So, Pooja, I'll actually start by stating something that I missed in the last example. Is since this client of mine that I spoke of had so many thinking talents in his dominant bucket. Like I said, he was brimming with ideas all the time, but because he was experiencing manager burnout, he was not able to do anything out of it. Something as simple, I mean, we agreed that he would just note down at any point of time he gets an idea. He would just note it down and then he could dwell on it and work on it as and when that happened, so it doesn't get lost, right? So he did that, and now he has a really long list of things, and he's actually found he's actually part of now global forums where he contributes to ideation on a
Yeah.
really. So tip, I don't want to be preposterous and give tips, but I can share experiences, right? So this like I said, this critical incident is an experience of how something seemingly transactional, like noting down every time an idea comes up, or penning it down, actually can lead to something very strategic and very big for the client, right? So I think as coaches, I think we shouldn't deliberate too much on how strategic is the solution, or how fancy does it sound, and how out of the box it is. It's really all about the coachee and the client, right? And because it's all the talents lie in him or her, and I think our job and our purpose is really to be an agent in helping them focus what they already have, their innate abilities, their talents, and intentionally work on them to make them strengths
Yeah.
and get their desired outcomes, right? And
Yeah,
in
absolutely.
that process, if it's a simple solution, that's okay,
Yeah,
so
actually, Lopa, more often than not, it's a very simple solution. And one thing that I think the strengths-based development journey that Gallup is on, the one thing that we've all believed in is that it's not necessary that big problems need big solutions. Sometimes
hmm,
the biggest problems are handled by the smallest of things. And the reason I say they're small is not because of their tactical nature. Sometimes people feel they're small solutions because it is so obvious to them. Like you said in the beginning, you want to change the color of your car, and if somebody tells you to do that more, you find that very simplistic. And that's the
yes.
beauty of this whole thing, is to get intentional about the simple things in life as opposed to doing something out of the box, drastic, or things that are not even close to you or you don't associate with. So I think the beauty of the whole thing is in its simplicity.
Right. The other thing,
Yeah.
Pooja, that I found particularly rewarding, and I intentionally, work on this every time I'm talking to a client, and whether it's the first interaction or it's a multiple interaction, is encourage them to experiment with their talents, using them intentionally to expand what they are already really good at, and permeate that to all facets of life. And and I've seen this rewarding, and which is what came across in the first two stories that I spoke of, right? Because each human being is a sum of several parts, and it's one person dealing with all of those parts, right? So I found that encouraging them to experiment, and let it permeate across work and life, has been very, very rewarding for them, and has been great learning for me.
Yeah.
And
Great points.
what I've stayed away from, Pooja, is don't focus on human well-roundedness.
Mm.
I just avoid that like plague. Yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, that's something I think we say very often, that, humans are not meant to be well-rounded. Peas are meant to be well-rounded. So as human beings, we all have our peaks and troughs. So I think that's a fair thing to keep in mind. Jim, any questions from the chat room?
From me, and I want to kind of focus a little bit on team dynamics. What have you done, or as you've worked with strengths in team settings, have you done anything that has been particularly successful? We know strengths combined in the team setting can kind of lead to exponential performance gains. Have you seen any of that, or used any tools in the team setting that's kind of helped bring teams together from a strengths perspective?
Jim, this is the third story that I spoke of, where we had this leader who practiced self-expression and regulation depending on the situation, and that translated into enhanced engagement, right? And that was really all about team dynamics, where they valued their leader that much more. because they recognized their leaders' strengths. They recognized the strengths that they had as a team, and they knew how to play the game of chess so much better now, because instead of everyone being the foot soldier or the king, now you also had a horse and a camel, and the strategy going there. So I think it's very, very powerful to look at constructs of team strengths, and it has a very, very high correlation on improving team dynamics and output.
Yeah, have you used or have you worked with the we have a grid that we've created. Oftentimes people create their own grid that's not really complicated, your team down the side and the 34 themes across the top. Have you worked with anything like that, or in those circumstances where, and then what's kind of an initial response that you get from the teams when they see that for the first time, and how do you coach that piece?
So, Jim, I haven't directly worked with that, but one of my coaches, had gone through a team grid based strength coaching in the United States, one of them. And this was a group of very, very senior leaders, very senior business leaders. And, they'd done Zenger Folkman earlier. And sorry, I should not talk about other methodologies, but and then
it's okay.
And they did the strength finder, and they had a convention where they did the team grid, and what they did was, what happened is, as a team, they had a moment of truth where they realized why someone was great at what they were at, and why someone wasn't, probably very good at some role. And what that helped the leadership team do is to realign work. Right, and I'm talking about very, very senior leaders, hence the impact across geographies and on the P&L is very high. And I'm told that as a result of this, they have greater work satisfaction, and the efficiencies in the new roles are higher. So I haven't directly worked with them on this, but I did speak to one of my clients who went through this.
Yeah. Before we came on today, you and I were talking a little bit about you quizzed me on some numbers. You said, hey, how does the strengths movement scale out? And we have some very ambitious goals of 1 billion people and 1 million coaches. When we think about India from that perspective, and it houses 1.2, 1.3 billion of those people that we're going to reach, how do you see strengths rolling out in India over the next 3 to 5 years? How do we get that exponential lift when we're thinking about it? And what do you think needs to take place? We've got to get coaches on the ground, but are there cultural barriers or things that need to take place for that to happen, or is the ground ripe and ready and we just need to execute? Tell me, what do you think that needs to be as we look forward?
Wow, I feel like the oracle right now.
You should be.
I'll take a stab at it based on my experience. Jim, there's no one silver bullet that can be bitten for India, right? India is a microcosm of maybe 25 countries put together as you would know it. So, the culture and the language changes every 500 kilometers. That's about every 200 miles. That's just how diverse India is, right? That said, that's the environment, right? That said, the adaptation of technology is very high. So, India had its technological revolution in the 1990s, and then on the adoption of internet, of telecom. As we speak, 0.9 billion people are on telephones and internet, right? So the coverage of internet is higher than the pervasion of schools in India, for instance, right? So that's the level of adoption of internet and technology. So I think the ingredients are in place, right? And initiatives like the Gallup Call to Coach, which is on the YouTube, right, which can be viewed real time or later, um, are great. Because they don't restrict, they allow you a personalized experience. You could do it on the move, you can do it whenever and as and when you feel like, right? So the whole N=1 personalized experience thing really applies to India as well. I think what will help is awareness, right? So awareness on the Gallup strength-based movement will really help. What will also help is what's being done in the US. You were talking to me about is where you're getting students into the strength-based journey, right? You're exposing them to it, right? That would really help, because contrary to the Western economies where the aging population is higher than you know the uh, the population in the 20s or younger population. In India, the working population and the children, the percentage is far higher than the aging population, right? So that's a really large base that uh, you could work on creating awareness, creating excitement about, and getting them into the strength-based journey very early on. So as they become young adults and as they start working, it becomes a part of their way of work life.
No, very good. Pooja, can you get working on that? We'll just get into the schools there in India, and all problems will be solved. No, we are seeing a big lift in that in the United States. We have a Strengths Quest product that really focuses on high school, college age for those students, and same assessment as the Strengths Finder. Same, just different tools as we kind of focus on the education area. No, I agree with you. I think that's a very valid point, and a good way as we think about India to maybe attack this is to come in and get it done early. So I appreciate that insight. Pooja, that's all I have. Back to you.
That's all I have, Lopa. It was absolutely great hearing those things from you and seeing how the journey for you has evolved over the last almost a year that we met and we started on this for you. So it was great hearing. And hopefully we should be able to do some more work around this in the future. I mean, the education part of it is huge in India. The opportunity is really big, and increasingly we are finding progressive schools and schools that are sort of looking to adopt this philosophy, and we've been talking a lot about it. So hopefully we should have something around that as well in 2016 among some of the other fun stuff that's going to happen. So that's all that I have, Jim. Thank you so much.
Great. Thanks to the both of you for coming out today and for doing this. And we'll remind you, if you're thinking about maybe you have a passion for schools, for students, and you're thinking, man, I'd really like to take Strengths Finder into the schools. Pooja, are you ready to say, do we have some courses coming up that folks could consider?
Yes, not around education, but there's some of the other things that I'll just highlight real quick. Of course, as early as tomorrow, we have a breakfast briefing in Delhi, and it's there on the website, etc. And that is something that will just that will tell people who are interested about the strengths coaching certification that Gallup has and the journey that we have embarked on as an organization. So that's as early as tomorrow in Delhi. Apart from that, the upcoming course and the accelerated course is coming up in Bombay in the week of Feb 1st. And if that's too early or too soon for you, the next one is in Bangalore in the week of March 14th. So that's something which is there in this quarter.
And I'll remind individuals a really easy way to stay up with our courses that are available is a new website we just opened up called courses.gallup.com. So very easy to get to that, and you used to have to kind of dig in on the GSC, and you can still do that at the Gallup Strength Center, but courses.gallup.com will get you just a list of everything that we're doing, and we're continuing to find ways to make that easy for you to get signed up and get registered. If Pooja, if folks wanted to be a part of a future breakfast briefing, what's the easiest way for them to get on a list so that we'd notify them when those are coming up?
We actually do send mailers to everyone who's been part of the Gallup journey in whichever way. So if you're a client, if you've taken your Strengths Finder, etc., the mailers that go out would inform everyone about upcoming breakfast briefings, etc., in whichever location that they happen in India. So so just stay tuned for some of those emails that you get from Gallup.
If they're not on that list, what's the easiest way or the best way for them to get on that list?
I will have to figure that out.
Okay, maybe send us an email, coaching@gallup.com. We'll
Absolutely.
route that. Yeah, we'll route that back around to India so we get you on that list as well. Remind everyone to take full advantage of all the resources we have available at the Gallup Strengths Center, just gallupstrengthscenter.com. Send us your questions, comments, if you'd like to be a guest blogger as well. We'd love to see some blogs come out of India as well. If you'd like to do that, we would put those on our coaches blog. You can send us an email, coaching@gallup.com, put guest blogger in the subject line. We're not able to take all of them, but the really good ones we will post to our coaches blog. It'd be great if you'd like to do that. You can also catch the recorded audio and video of this program as well as all the past ones. The links to our Facebook group, YouTube page, iTunes feeds, RSS feeds, iPhone apps. We have that for Android as well. They're all free, by the way. And now we've started the new weekly Strengths Wisdom program that's going on every single week of the year. We're emphasizing one of the 34 themes from January through October, and we're kind of doing it in a pulse around the world. Love to have you join us. Again, the whole center for that is the coaches blog, coaching.gallup.com. If you found this helpful, we'd ask that you'd share it, and we want to thank everyone for joining us and listening to this. And with that, we'll say good day, everybody.